Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next installment of GEMA Talks. I'm Rich Batista, and I am here today with Charlie Andrews. Charlie is Executive Vice President of Development, Programming, and Event Series at Fox Entertainment, the Fox Broadcasting Network, part of the Fox empire. He's now a real veteran of the TV programming business, and looking forward to having a conversation with him. As many of you in this GEMA Talks know, the industry landscape has changed pretty dramatically over the last 5 to 7 years. And there's a lot to talk about that with Charlie, and to speak to him about the broadcast business and vis-a-vis the streaming world, and just in terms of how the demand for content has just proliferated. So it'll be a very, very healthy, exciting conversation. So Charlie, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here.
It's good to see you.
Thanks for taking the time. I think it would be, it'd be great to sort of understand how you first, broke into the business, or growing up, were you somebody who watched a lot of television, or did you stumble into it? Talk a little bit about growing up and how that kind of informed what you ended up doing with your life.
Yeah, of course. So, I grew up in Chicago, and I'd say most people I knew worked in real estate or finance or just some other field. I mean, literally couldn't have been further away from entertainment and movies, TV, any aspect of it. And I was always obsessed with television. I loved watching people's stories. I loved sitcoms, but I also loved a good nighttime soap. And I was pretty dedicated every night to sitting in front of that television, whether my parents liked it or not. And interestingly, neither of my parents watched TV. So it was, a little bit here and there, but not in a real way. Right. My mom, maybe a few shows, but it was just something that I was really, really obsessed with. And so going to college and going to Georgetown, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do at all with my life, which is, obviously pretty normal. And I went to Georgetown. I went there, frankly, because I just really wanted to be in a big city, but also kind of get out of the Midwest and try a different part of the country, and have a place with a real campus community. And I loved Georgetown. So I had the best 4 years there. I still have so many friends for life that I talk to every single week. So I feel really lucky with my year at Georgetown, the friends I met, and the 4 years I had. But even kind of coming out of it, I had some friends who took the screenwriting class. And when I was there,
were you in the college, Charlie, right?
Yeah, I was in the college, and I was a government major, and then I was a Spanish minor and a theology minor. And I graduated in 2004. So, 17 years ago, almost 18 years ago, I guess. And there were some classes, but I don't even think there was a minor yet I think it's called media studies. I think it was called, maybe there was a minor. And I didn't even really engage that much in it. What I did do a lot of was I read a lot of Variety, Hollywood Reporter, any book that was available at Barnes and Noble when bookstores existed in a real way. And I read all of those just to get an understanding of it. But what was also kind of clear to me was that there was really not much about television. In the trades, there was a lot written about television, but primarily it was film. And obviously a lot has changed now, and TV is such a bigger focus, and I'd say pretty equal to film. But at the time, there were no books about television. There were maybe a chapter within a book about TV, but it was really focused on movies. And so I just kind of was educating myself a little bit just on the industry and what that meant. But really, there wasn't that much at my fingertips and that much access. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do after college. I had a friend whose cousin from Chicago had been a page at NBC, and she was then an assistant at NBC. And so I just hopped on the phone with her, and I'd known her a little bit growing up because she would visit every summer. And so her name's Lynn Barry, and she was an assistant to Jeff Zucker, who was at NBC at the time. And she was just let me get you, an information on the Page program. So I met with someone named Bill Connor, and then his Betty Thomas, who was awesome. And then I interviewed with them, and then I got into the Page program 2 days later, but they said, we can't start you till October. So, which was kind of nice because I did a bunch of road trips around the summer and kind of traveled around the country in my parents' Ford Explorer and had a blast. But that was kind of my first entree into this entire industry. And I didn't really know what it was going to be. I knew I wanted to work in television dramas, even though I watched a lot of sitcoms.
And
I'd
Charlie,
always,
why don't you also just, for the
yeah,
audience, explain for folks who may not know what the
yeah.
Page program is exactly.
Oh yeah, of
First of all, it's
course.
a very competitive program, so it's impressive that you got in.
No, but it's
just explain how it works.
so the Page program is, I'd say it would be like working in the mailroom at an agency.
Right.
And it's an entree into NBC. And so they give you a uniform. It's like Kenneth the Page in 30 Rock. And you give tours of what at the time was the Burbank facility, which was where they shot Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Ellen. It was the Dennis Miller show at the time. And you gave tours of the Burbank lot. And you then sat people at the Tonight Show and you helped with ticketing and all these different things. So it was, you know, truly giving tours. And then you did that for 2 months. And then after 2 months, you would apply to different departments within the company. So from programming to the studio, to the network, to research, publicity, marketing, and a bunch of different assignments. And you would interview for those assignments. And then you would spend 3 months there kind of assisting all the assistants and helping the executives with whatever they needed. So essentially an internship. And you would be interning within those departments, but with the hopes of making some contacts. And oftentimes the contacts you would make would kind of land you, hopefully, your next job in a agency mailroom. That was oftentimes what happened. But I was really lucky to get an assignment at the studio in development. So, you know, it was picking up everyone's lunches every day. It was helping the assistants answer the phones, anything they needed. And then also, like, when assistants would be out for a week, you would sub in for them. So you would then be the assistant to whoever the executive was for the week, answering their calls, scheduling, helping them with whatever they needed. So that was my
were you able to read scripts?
Yeah, it was, you were able to read scripts. And by the way, like, all the execs there, I met a woman named Catherine Pope right when I started as the Page, and she was from Chicago. She's one of the coolest. It was like one of the coolest execs you'll ever meet. Really brilliant, creative mind, amazing note giver, but also like wanted to talk to everyone and wanted to engage with everyone and get to know their story. So I was really lucky to meet Catherine. We had the Chicago connection, and we both we just hit it off immediately. So we became friends and friendly. She became much more of a mentor. Now we're very good friends, but she was definitely my mentor and still is. Yeah. And I was lucky enough to work in her department. She was the head of drama at the time. So she had a job similar to mine right now. And she kind of took me under her wing. And there was an assistant job that opened up while I was their Page in the department. And I really developed a great relationship with her and someone named Lauren Stein, Laura Lancaster. And they shared an assistant, Laura and Lauren. And so they just pulled me in their office one day and said, like, hey, do you want to keep working here full time? And now you'll actually have benefits and you could assist us. Yeah. So that was kind of how I got into it. And I was really lucky to have been given that opportunity, because a lot of people go through those departments and assistant jobs don't open up that often. I mean, someone has to leave for it to be available. So that's kind of the nature of it. So I was really lucky that their assistant was leaving and that they liked me, and I'd always gotten their salad orders correct, and they were impressed by that.
Clearly the Georgetown education.
Yeah, exactly. But getting someone's lunch order correct is a lot more important than I ever would have realized. And luckily I'm kind of type A about it. So I got on their desk, and then I was their assistant for about a year. But you know, it was one of those things where I had no idea what a notes call was. And a notes call is when the executives read a script and then they get on with the writers to give creative feedback to what they love, what they want to enhance, what they want to bring out more, or if there's a holistic change they need to make, which is always a really hard notes column when you're saying, you know, make huge, massive changes, especially because people have been spending, you know, 100 hours of their life pulling this script together. So notes calls could be really great, and they could also be really tough. Yeah. So I was scheduling their notes calls, but also trying to keep up with all the scripts. And between the two of them, they worked on like probably 8 or 9 shows. It was NBC Studios at the time. And it was cool because it was mostly shows for NBC, but it was also shows for Fox. They did House and some of the bigger shows on the outside as well. Because I was at the studio, not the network. And the differences could be a little confusing unless you've worked in the system, but the studio owns the content and they sell it to the network. And so you'll have like House was produced by NBC, but was sold to Fox.
Right.
And like 20th Century Fox studio produced Modern Family for ABC. So oftentimes the internal studio sells to the network they're associated with, but at the same time there are exceptions where the shows are sold outside. So it's very cool to be at the studio and kind of seeing that process of
that way you also get to meet executives at other networks as well.
Yes, exactly. So your circle gets bigger. But if you're just at a network, oftentimes you kind of know the studios and the other studios around town, but if you're at the studio, you're hustling everywhere around town to sell your shows and getting to know everyone, to develop those relationships, to see what they need. So it was an incredible learning experience. And I worked for two people who really were great creatives. And I also had developed a real mentor in Catherine, which was amazing. And then there was this program at the time that was a junior executive program called the Associates Program at NBC. Right. And that was kind of a step after assistant. So I've been an assistant for a little while, and they were coming up with their new cycle of associates, and they normally let in, 6, 7, 8 people, and a lot of people in the company, but a lot of people within the industry, and then even from other industries apply. And if you get in, you are pretty much like the most junior of the junior executives in a department.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to get into that a lot with Catherine's help, to be totally honest. She really coached me through that process. And you interviewed, at the time I was interviewing with Bonnie Hammer, who ran all the cable group, Jeff Gaspin, who was also a part of that. And I think Kevin Riley was the president of the network at the time. And so you interviewed with the heads of all the divisions within
big meetings.
Yeah, it was really cool. And you're young, so it's your first time ever really presenting that way. So it's intimidating as well. And people in parts of the business you don't know, like you don't know the business affairs side. And so you're just kind of, talking creative, but you're also really trying to talk about the business and understanding of it. And, you also don't know what you're really getting into at the same time. So that was a really great experience. And I was lucky enough to get into that program. So then I stayed in the drama programming department is a better way of putting it, because we all did development and current. And I worked under a bunch of awesome executives who covered a lot of shows and were putting together a lot of pitches, working with a lot of writers, directors, and production companies to sell shows, mostly to NBC, but also outside, and getting to see that process. But I was kind of like their second on these projects. So they were lead and I was backing them up and learning. So like I had never been in a pitch before. I had never sold a pitch or made a call to another network or a platform to say, we have this great show, we want you to hear the pitch and hopefully sell it to you. So just getting to see the nuts and bolts of that from beginning to end was pretty incredible, because I just didn't even understand that's how it worked. Like when I came out here, I remember saying I want to work in drama development. I had literally no idea what that meant. I just knew it existed because I had read it somewhere. So
you knew what a drama was, and that was about
I knew what a drama was, and I assumed someone developed it. So like I kind of put those pieces together, I guess. And so I came out here doing that, and I was lucky enough to end up in that department when I got into the associates program. And then I was at the studio, but there was I came to NBC at a time of let's say tremendous change, where while I was there for about 6 years, maybe a hair over 6 years, there were multiple presidents and chairmen of the network, from Jeff Zucker, Ben Silverman, Kevin Riley, Angela Bromstad, and the studio, Catherine Pope, who became president of the studio and head of development of the network. And there were all these different, then Bob Greenblatt by the time I was leaving, and all these really kind of prolific executives.
Yeah.
And so I got to learn from all of them. And also kind of in all those changeovers, there were a lot of layoffs and a lot of new people coming in. So being the junior executive, I was really lucky to get to just frankly learn from a lot of people and see different styles of how they approach creative, how they deal with talent, their own personal executive style. And so it was a really cool learning ground for me. And I kind of like became who I was in a lot of ways as an executive. And I got to work on awesome shows like Heroes and Friday Night Lights. Those were definitely some of the best relationships I made, and writers who I'm still in touch with. And like Jason Katims, who was the showrunner on Friday Night Lights, I've done, three other shows with him since then. Right. And, some of those formative relationships you make, you just have this bond when you've worked on a show for that many years together, which was awesome. And so I love that time there. I also came out of the closet while I was there. Like I literally NBC were my formative years, and was a huge part of becoming who I am just as a person, as an executive. So that was kind of the start and how I got into everything.
Yeah. And how you were, I think you told me you were there 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I guess it was probably like 6.5.
And then Fox approached you, or there was an opportunity at Fox. How did that come about?
Yeah, a good friend of mine, someone named Terrence Carter, had left Fox, or I'm sorry, left NBC like a year beforehand, and had maybe a year and a half during one of the transitions and gone to run drama at Fox. And my contract was coming to an end, and I had actually switched to comedy. So I'd done like a year or a year and a half of comedy at NBC, which was really cool. Like they were really great about letting me try different things and moving to different departments. Cause I always say, like, you don't know exactly what you want until you've tried it. And if you can tack on different skill sets, it's really, it's huge for the rest of your career to have tried different things and to have that facility and that language. So I was lucky enough to be doing comedy, but Terrence had come back to me to say, you know, would you ever be interested in coming to Fox and being his number 2 in drama? And he was building out this new department. So I was super interested.
Yeah.
So I interviewed with him, and then Kevin Riley, who had also been the president of NBC while I had been there, and now was the president of Fox, had gone to Fox as well. So it was a big transition because I had been at NBC for so long, but it was a really great opportunity to learn a different culture, learn a different system, learn a different corporate culture, and a different way of doing things. And I like to be at one place and I like to stay there, but it's also really important to move around and see how people do things differently. So that was kind of under that change, and I was able to make that change after I think about 6.5 years at NBC.
And you focused on drama at Fox.
Yes. So mostly drama development, but I always, my entire time, have had a current show as well. So I've always worked on, the development of shows, hearing a ton of pitches, but then also working on shows that are on the air. And
why don't you explain for the audience,
yeah,
current programming versus development? What are some of the key duties of someone in current programming?
So
it's very different than development.
Yeah, they're very different. I mean, it's a lot of giving notes, but development is, you hear a lot of pitches coming in. If you buy them, it's oftentimes they're competitive with other networks. So you're really trying to sell yourself on how you would program it, where you put on your schedule, why
you're the best home for it.
Yeah. And you really have to have that compelling argument so it doesn't go to NBC or now a streamer. There's so much competition out there for TV shows. And it's really fun to kind of be in that game sometimes and to win that game and kind of get a big show to come to you as opposed to elsewhere. It's really cool to be a part of that. But beyond that, you're then really working. It's like being a book editor when someone is developing it. You have multiple steps of development. So you have kind of a story area, then an outline, and these different creative steps to make sure everyone's aligned and to make sure sometimes it would also be something like this. This is a great way to go about it, but for Fox, it makes more sense to go about it this way, or for NBC to go about it this way, just based on your brand. And what's great about Fox, it's always been pushing the envelope a little bit more than the other networks. So that was what was fun about development. What also the part about development, though, is most of the time those projects, the team works together on them, which I love the team aspect, and that's great. But oftentimes in development, the head of the department is the one kind of delivering the notes to the writer, and delivering notes is hard, and it takes a long time to get really good at it. Even if you have a natural gift for it, writers have made these decisions for a reason, and oftentimes really excellent reasons, and they've thought it out.
Typically feel very strongly about the reason.
Yeah, and they should. I mean, they're passionate. They're creating a world. They're creating a character. They have something they want to say about the world, and this is the backdrop through which they're doing it. So they have thought this out in such detail. And giving notes is, asking them to make some major changes oftentimes. And one thing about development is that unless you're the head of the department, you're not oftentimes leading those notes calls. And I was lucky enough to lead a fair amount of them because I was Terrence's number 2, but like at NBC on the development, it was mostly the other execs giving the notes. But on the current side, which is the shows that are on the air, and those are the shows that are in production. It's oftentimes season, 5 of Las Vegas. And, at that point, the head of the department is working on the new shows and really big picture. Because when you're in current, it's a lot of budget, dealing with marketing, trying to make sure the show is getting everything it needs in terms of outward facing to its audience and internally within the network and getting the support it needs. So that's a big part of current, but it doesn't matter how junior you are. If you're on a current show, you're the one giving the notes because your bosses are dealing with so many other things.
Yeah.
So you're really thrown into the fire in the best way possible. So that's why I felt so lucky to be the studio exec on a Heroes or Friday Night Lights or a Las Vegas or House, pretty like fun shows. And you have to give notes on every piece of material that comes in. So, that's a story area or they're pitching it to you. That's like what the episode's going to be about, the outline of the episode, then the first script of the episode, then the next script of the episode, then the cut of the episode.
Yeah.
So it's all to say that you have all these steps on every single TV show before it goes on air. And you and the other executives, I was a studio executive at NBC, but I was the network executive at Fox. And you develop these really intimate relationships with your showrunners and your writers and your directors and your producers, because often even the writers are like, okay, this episode needs work. Like you're all in it together. Like it's like, this episode is phenomenal. It's perfect. Like we don't really have any notes. Like let's go shoot it and then lock it up. But things could go really great and really right every step of the way. And you could have an amazing script. And then, there's something with a piece of casting or a directorial choice that makes it not come alive the way you intended on the script. And so there's always a lot of problem solving and a lot of big picture moments where you have to get in there and everyone's in there together, from the executives to the producers to, most importantly, the showrunner. And you're in there together really trying to make something great or make it better. And
I would think too, with drama, another fun part of that job at the beginning of the season is talking about the arc for that whole season. And
absolutely,
we want to introduce this new character. Should we do it in episode 3 or episode 7? And what's going to be the finale cliffhanger this year? And all of that must be discussed pretty early on, I would imagine.
Yeah, you oftentimes get a series or a season long pitch, or at least the first half of the season. And, even if that pitch is excellent, you might say, like, we need to eventize our premiere more. I mean, I think that's why you see, I think Grey's Anatomy does it incredibly and has been doing it for like 18 years. Our shows, the 911s, which are these big Ryan Murphy procedurals, we have huge events to start off the season because you're trying to bring the viewers back and you want to be able to promote to something. Like on 911, we did a 3-episode tsunami event a couple of years ago. And those are some of our biggest episodes ever. And they're also more expensive, but you're willing to pay more to get people back to come back into the season. Because, you go off for 3 or 4 months, people find something else. They forget about the show. So you have to figure out ways to bring people back into it. And that's a real hallmark of network television. But I'd say it's a hallmark of all platforms now, especially. I mean, even the streamers, there's a lot of attrition between seasons because much like on any platform, people find different things and they aren't aware of it when it's coming back. So they just don't know. And so finding a big reason for people to come back is always super important.
Well, the other interesting thing, I was going to get into this later, but we should talk about it now because you brought it up. I think the other really interesting thing for broadcast vis-a-vis streamers is, if let's say a streamer has a 10-episode series, you could watch all 10 episodes in 2 days.
Yes, totally.
You're not going to, and then that show's not on again for another year, maybe.
Yeah.
On broadcast, you're watching it once a week, so you're living longer with that brand. And I think that's an interesting differential.
Well, it's just different episodic orders too. I mean, you'll see 6 to 10 episode orders oftentimes in streaming, sometimes 13, but not that often anymore.
Not anymore, much more, right?
We on broadcast rarely do under 10. We'll do 10 pretty often. Like the shows that I work on, like both the 911s are 18 episodes. A show we call The Resident we do, which is an awesome medical procedural, is doing 23 episodes this year. It's just built for that. This really great, really special dance show we're doing called The Big Leap is doing 11 this year. This awesome soap, Our Kind of People, is doing 12. So it's just to say, like, every episode is different or every show is different. And oftentimes, like on The Big Leap, we were going to do 10 and they were like, oh, we could actually use one more to tell the story. And we're like, oh, okay, great. Let's add another episode, because it used to be the network demanding what episode count it would be. And now, like, you really want to make sure that the creators are in that decision with you. And sometimes you just need certain episodes to be on the schedule in a certain way. And there is just that
you
demand.
need a minimum volume.
Yeah. So you don't have too many reruns and all of that. But additionally, I would just say is you want to make sure that you're telling the right story in the right number of episodes. It's really important to know that. And a show, like I would just say, like when I worked on Heroes, we did, I think it was 23 or maybe 25 episodes the first season. That a show like that would never happen now. You would never do more than 10 because it's so much special effects. It's so much serialization. The first season of Heroes would be 2.5 seasons, maybe even 3 seasons of a streaming show now. And that would have been the right way to tell that story, frankly, too, is Heroes probably should have been 10 a year from the beginning, but there wasn't, people hadn't adjusted to doing shorter orders yet. Lost was actually one of the first, and they started saying we're only doing 16 a season. And that was a big change in the industry and was a huge change on our side of it to really start accommodating how much story you could tell in a year. I mean, I remember I didn't work on the 24s, but I've done other shows with Howard Gordon, who ran the 24s. And I mean, doing 24 episodes of that show was virtually impossible because it was just not only so much story, hard to produce them all and hit your air dates. It's just a wild amount of production.
Would you argue today that Heroes is a great example? In some ways, would you argue that it's better for the creator to only have 10 episodes because you have time to dedicate to 10 versus 24, which is a huge difference?
Yeah, it's a major difference. And I would say that, and I think Tim Crane, who created Heroes, we've talked about it, would definitely agree with that too. Yeah. Whereas Amy Holden Jones, who created The Resident, like maybe she doesn't want to do 23 is a lot, but like she's always wanted to build it for 22. And it's meant to do a lot of episodes, and it's a medical procedural. There's lots of stories to tell. There's a real franchise element. So there is an organizing principle each week when you come in that frames the episodes. You have 3 medical cases, and coming up with those cases is incredibly difficult, to be clear, but you have a framework for telling stories. Where a show that's, real serialization like Heroes, you're coming up with new kinds of stories each week. Yeah. So it's just harder to sustain that. Even the 911s, which have a procedural element, but they do these massive events, like 18 just makes more sense for them.
And so after a few years at Fox, you made an interesting career shift and you went to Netflix.
Yes, I did.
Would love to hear the motivation to potentially that you had to make that move, and what was it like there, and how do you compare that to Fox? And then you did end up going back to Fox, but
I did.
You sort of explain that whole piece.
Yeah, sure. So I had been at Fox for 4.5 years or so, maybe 5, when my contract was coming up, and I had been the number 2 in that department it was a little under 5 years. And I really loved my job. I mean, I was working on like Empire, which was one of my favorite shows I've ever worked on. It was something I would have watched. And when you have a show that you love, and it's also a show you would definitely watch, it's such a great feeling because you're a fan of it, and you're also getting to contribute in a way. And so I was working on shows that I really thought were fantastic, and I loved my bosses. But I had been doing a version of the same thing for, almost 5 years. And my boss at the time wasn't leaving, and that I wasn't looking to replace him either. I mean, he was doing a great job in that role. So you just kind of get to a point sometimes where you want a new experience and you want to try something different. And I was starting to feel like things were getting a little repetitive on the career side for me. So I didn't really necessarily want to leave the company because I loved my boss was my good friend Terrence, but then also our bigger bosses, Dana Walden and Gary Newman, who become real mentors of mine. But I also really wanted a new challenge and to not be doing kind of the same thing for another few years. Right. So I had spoken to some friends who had gone to Netflix, and they loved it. They were working in streaming. It was just a different language, a different way of building shows, programming globally. So as my contract was coming to an end, I started having conversations with them, and there was a role in their drama series department, which was, working on their shows they were putting on the platform and the development of the new ones. And it just seemed like a great opportunity to do something different. And in an ideal world, I was really looking to kind of be the head of drama somewhere, but there was no job like that. And getting to go see how streaming worked, and my friends were just, it was my friend Brian Wright, my friend Jane Wiseman, they were having the time of their lives and putting on incredible content. And so I wanted to see what that was all about. And I was there for a little under a year. And I will say, like, I loved the company. I loved the culture. Coming from very traditional media, from NBC and Fox, there are lots of they're larger institutions, and they've been doing things a very, very specific way for many, many decades even. Mm-hmm. And when things have been done a certain way for a long time, it's hard to change that process. And what was amazing about Netflix is it was always like, oh yeah, this is the way we do it. But if you think there's a better way to do it, tell us why, and we will change it. Like it was very foreign, I think, for a lot of more traditional media companies. And they were coming from tech where, like my partner, he works in tech, and like they change their processes all the time because things change so quickly. Right. And getting to see how nimble Netflix was really amazing. And also nimble in terms of creative. It was episodic count, the number of episodes you do. the way that you put every episode on at the same time, but you're also thinking globally. You want it to work domestically, but you also don't want to have a global component.
Right.
And seeing how their algorithm worked, understanding how they count viewership, their relationship with their consumer and their subscriber. It was just so
didn't have to worry about broadcast standards.
Don't have to worry about broadcast standards. Those certain shows are meant for certain audiences on the platform. Sure. No act breaks. So there were these incredible things to get to learn and be a part of, and also just seeing how a tech company works. I mean, it was,
right.
You know, I remember like the vending machines at Fox had what you would expect to be in a vending machine, and vending machines at Netflix had Apple products like keyboards and chargers and a mouse. Like it was very
Fox. They had Snickers bars.
Yeah. I mean, all are great, but like it was just a very different world. And getting to be a part of that was incredible. And it was intimidating at first too. I remember being those first couple of months, and they say to you when you go to Netflix, like it's going to take you 3 to 12 months to be comfortable here. Not in a bad way. It's starting any new job is hard. I mean, Rich, we've all moved around, had different roles, and it's always discomfort in a really good way. Like it's a new challenge, you're meeting new people, you need to be on all the time when you're starting a new job. And that's exhausting anyway. But when I went to Netflix, I'd be in meetings, and you know, I'd like to say I'm pretty good at speaking English, and there'd be so many words I had no idea what the words meant, just because like they would be tech words or words that Netflix had created to talk about a certain issue or a problem or an approach. And so I just wouldn't know what they were talking about. And it was kind of incredible, to the point where like when I started, they're like, here's a dictionary of like what these words mean.
The Netflix glossary.
Yeah, kind of. And so it was, I was learning a ton, and really what I was learning about so much was Netflix culture, and which they have a culture of openness, which I think is really fantastic. And to challenge the norms, and seeing that front center and right up front was amazing. So I really liked it, though I will say one thing that became clear to me was that, you know, I really wanted to be in more of a leadership position, and I wanted to be in a position where I was managing a team and setting the strategy and setting the creative strategy. And that's always something I had wanted. And that wasn't going to be the opportunity for me at Netflix. And I don't mean that as an insult. They never said it was going to be. It was, you know, to come and be in the drama department and be with a lot of other executives, continuing to build this amazing platform that they had started. And when my old bosses at Fox came back to me, because they had made some changes internally to be the head of drama and to run development and current and event series, it was one of the toughest decisions I ever made, because I loved Netflix and I loved being part of just what they were doing and building. It was so cool. At the same time, I knew that like I really did want to be in a leadership position, and that was something that I wanted out of my career. So I was thinking like crazy about it for like a month, to be really honest. And I was really transparent with Netflix about it, that Fox had come back to me. I was pretty open and honest. And they were, when I did make the decision to come back to Fox for this role, they were really supportive. I mean, they have this incredible culture of, you know, you have to do what's right for you, and you have to do what makes sense for you. And if that role didn't make sense, they were really kind of, you know, I would say they gave me their blessing, and they were incredible mentors about it too. So I was lucky to.
That's not always common either.
No, that's not really common at all. So I felt like they were amazing. So I'm still on good terms with all of them, but it was an amazing way to spend a year and to learn a little bit of streaming. I mean, obviously I'm not an expert in it, but also coming back to Fox, coming back to broadcast, which is such a different medium. And when I did come back, I was there when then the merger or the acquisition with Disney happened. So we were a vertically integrated network, meaning what I was saying earlier, where you have Fox Studios, it's called 20th, selling to Fox Network, and you're working together oftentimes. All our studios were sold to Disney. So, and we became an independent network, and, you know, with huge change is huge opportunity, but also it's really difficult. So we always had this pipeline coming in, the library of content, and we're also such close friends with everyone at the studio. We loved working together, but at the same time, we almost exclusively worked with them. So it was tough, but also a great opportunity to work with everyone else in town, and to work with all the other studios, and also start producing things internally for us and creating our own little mini studio. And we're actually just shooting our first show that we developed internally.
That's terrific.
So like it was a real learning experience for me, and I got to really grow and kind of bring back some studio aspects to my job, and, you know, really hustle in a way that I hadn't had to as a network executive, to bring in our own ideas and thinking of our ideas, giving them to writers, acquiring IP. There was just a level of hustle that was, you know, getting to flex a new muscle. So it was kind of amazing in that way. But it was there were a lot of growing pains and a lot of learning that I'm still learning a ton about this other side of it. And I like that. It's been a challenge in a great way.
And so let's talk a little bit about the rise of the streamers, and clearly, clearly there's just an insatiable appetite for content from consumers, and the demand has really gone through the roof. And as you said, they've become credible competitors. How do you?
They are more than credible. I mean, they are just incredible.
So how do you compete now? Because and I'm thinking more from the creator side. How do you convince a creator or pitch to a creator why they should do a show on Fox versus go to Netflix or Hulu, or they feel like there may be other benefits there that outweigh going to a broadcaster?
Well, it's oftentimes also knowing your brand and knowing what makes sense for you. Like, there are certain shows that I love and I watch and are incredible on streamers or on other networks, but I know they're not a Fox show. And it's understanding,
even if you wanted it, you knew it
wouldn't work on our platform. And so it's about really understanding your platform, what kinds of shows are going to work there, and who your audience is. And we don't have, I love YA, but we don't have the YA audience. That is very much shifted to streaming. And our audience is a 40-something-year-old man or woman, primarily female. And so trying to find shows that really speak to who is watching broadcast and the kinds of shows, whether it's a big culture piercing soap, a big event like a C'04 or a Sleepy Hollow, or kind of a character driven procedural like 911s. Like, those are kind of the programs that we know really work for us and we know could have an impact and can break out, especially from kind of a multi-generational point of view, and a real voice at the center that is, I'd say, closer to the demo who watches our air. And so by kind of knowing that and embracing it, it very much dictates the kinds of shows we go after. And I'd also say we're developing so much internally now, which means we're going to directly to writers and saying, we want to make a deal with you to develop a show for us. It's the kind of world we want to do it within. So it's not just about hearing pictures and buying them. It's about
reactive,
going out there. Yeah, it's not as reactive. It's being incredibly proactive and saying, this is what we're looking for. We love you. We love your writing. Do you want to create a show in this world with us? And we'll be your partners. And we're your studio and your network. And one thing that a lot of people, as you're kind of coming to this industry, you realize there's a lot of people involved in every show. There's a lot of executives, a lot of producers, a lot of voices. And one thing we can offer is less voices because we're your studio and your network. So trying to make something that was a disadvantage and losing our studio with 20th into a real advantage where it's just us and we're taking out layers. And that is a real appeal to a lot of writers and creators. And, we're just going to do 5-6 new dramas a year. Whereas at a streamer, you're probably going to do 30 to 80, depending on what streamer you are. And some less, but they're all ramping up to be in those numbers. And that's a huge number. And for us, we're doing 5 or 6. So you're going to get that. They can't give every one of those shows as a streamer as big of a marketing campaign. So you're going to get a certain level of campaign because these are the only bets we're taking. And so it's much more of a curated approach, kind of like what cable channels used to do. When you think of the AMCs and the Showtimes and HBOs, they didn't have the largest slate, but everything they did was very curated and very specific. So that's what we're trying to really make into an advantage in a lot of what we're working on. And then the other part is, while they're not having BS&P notes and act outs and even timing limitations is a huge advantage for streaming. There is a huge lag between seasons on other platforms, and we do have an immediacy to our programming, which is really helpful. So there would be certain things that would happen on Empire, and Tim Minear, who created the 911s with Brian Murphy and Brad Feldchuk, you could react to something that's happening culturally and you could talk about it on air 2 months later. And that's not always something you can do on other platforms because we write things and then we shoot them and then they are airing. And to be able to react to culture and the urgency of that is a huge advantage for us, and something we really try to bring in our programming and be central to the voice of it. And that is something we feel like is very specific to broadcast. So yeah, those are some of the advantages and disadvantages, but it's definitely could be challenging. There's no question about it.
Yeah. What would you list as to be a really effective studio executive, television studio executive or network executive? What do you think are sort of the 2 to 3 key skills you need to do it well?
I think loving television is I know that sounds really basic, but you have to love what we do. I love working with storytellers. I love working with characters who exist for 5-6 seasons and seeing them grow and change. But I think loving TV is first and foremost so important. Your relationships with talent couldn't be more important. Having great relationships with writers and working with them and really supporting them and supporting their vision, but also being able to have those creative conversations that might not be the easiest ones, but finding a path forward where their vision is intact, but also kind of the changes or the adjustments you need for the network or the platform or wherever you are. So I'd say those talent relationships are so important. Loving television is so important. And I would also say, like, one of the other most important things is really feeling a passion to put great stories out there and to put new voices out there. And look, number one, I think we need to entertain, but we need to be putting stories out there that are different. Like, one of the reasons I wanted to get into this was to tell stories that were for the gay community, the LGBTQ community. That was so important to me. And I'm so proud of some of the things that I've been able to work on with Empire and the 911s and some of these stories. Show Star that had this incredible trans storyline, trans character named Cotton. I've just been so happy that I've gotten to be a part of these stories and these characters' lives, because I do think they make such an impact and they can really change culture. And I think that is something that we need to keep front and center. There's a real power in that, and being able to do that and take that responsibility seriously, while also just still having a ton of fun and entertaining people, which is so important.
Sure. No, I get it. And it's, no, and as you said, you know, you're getting millions and millions of people to watch a TV show.
Yeah.
You can have a true impact.
Yeah, exactly.
As we kind of wrap up here, would love, you know, as you probably know, and I'm sure you've noticed it, certainly through Georgetown and other college students, there's a ton of interest in becoming creative executives and working on the creative side of TV and film, right? A lot more than probably when we were at school. What are your sort of key pieces of advice for people who want to break in, or maybe that are very junior level working at one of these companies? You know, what are your sort of 2 to 3 key Charlie Andrews words of wisdom?
Well, look, I think that passion for it, like, first and foremost, is whether it's representing writers, directors, producers, talent, it's working with writers as an executive, or being a writer yourself. I think you just have a passion to want to put stories out there. And like, that's massive. And I couldn't think of being more important. But I also know, like, you really can't have an ego about it. Like, at any stage, like, you have to be willing to do anything and not be kind of be too good to do a certain task or pick up the lunches. I think it's really about not having the ego and just being able to learn, because you could go to school, you could go to get your master's degree. All those things are incredible to do. At the same time, like, you really just have to learn on the job and see how it works. And you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to know what you're talking about, and just embracing that and wanting to learn and being open to it, and not, you know, so you can fake it till you make it enough. But at the same time, just being open to saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Could you please teach me? Excuse me, is such an important part of it too. And I mean, the amount of times I had to do that in my career and still do, you're not going to know everything. So how can you kind of get rid of your ego and be willing to just throw yourself in and learn and help in any way possible?
And when you read a script or look at material, what % do you think you innately have instincts for what's good and what works, and what % is you actually learn on the job? There are certain skills you learn about how to read a script or how to evaluate a script. And what would you say?
I think so much of it is your gut. Like, are you emotionally engaged with these characters, or is it funny? Does it make you laugh? Does it make you emote in some way? And is it a character you relate to, or is it an experience that you're invested in? I mean, that's just like your gut sometimes. And I think following your gut is so important. Then there are things I will say, like, I've gotten a lot better at. Like, if I read a show that's a crime solving police procedural, like, I can't say I used to be that great at breaking down a case and like what the best twists and turns are, or even identifying when you needed more. Now I will say, like, I've gotten a lot better at that. Like, I can look at a case, I can look at a way a story is told, and if it's escalating enough, if there are enough twists and turns. This is outside of police procedurals. This is any kind of story. Like, that is something that took me a while, and I'm still, every year you get better at giving notes and addressing creative and working with creatives. Like, it never ends, and because shows are always different, you have to adjust your style for each show. But I do think innately, like, your taste is important, and you want to be kind of known for what kind of shows you love and you want to work on, you want to put out there. And that's just important.
It's great. As you look into this new season, two questions, two related questions. The first one is, what show or two are you most excited about that's going to be airing on Fox?
Just one we just put out. It's called The Big Leap, and it's created by this woman, Liz Heldens, who I've worked with on and off my career for 17 years, from Friday Night Lights till now. And it's this, if you've ever seen the movie Full Monty, but it's about behind the scenes of a reality dance show, but it's people from all different types of life who would never be together. And they are all working towards their second chance and pursuing their dreams for the first time. So people who, it's socioeconomic diversity, it's body diversity, it's racial diversity, it's sexual diversity, all people who are either struggling or overcoming something and looking for a new start, and coming together through this really special tone of comedy and drama, but ultimately through dance. And I think all those dance movies I grew up on, Dirty Dancing, Flashdance, all these incredible films, it kind of strikes that kind of tone of hope. And I think it's really, really special and fantastic. So that's one that I've been working on and I love. Yeah.
I'll have to watch that one.
Check it out. It's on Hulu as well. You catch up on Hulu.
That's right. That's right. Good point. And then what's one or two shows from another company, a competitor of yours, that you either love or you wish was on the Fox network?
I could put one show on. I would love, I know it's now not even on the air, but like Orange is the New Black, which so many people would think would be like a perfect streaming show. That would have been an incredible Fox show. It's like such a specific voice through all those characters you had never seen before, come together for a reason that is, imprisonment. It's a subculture. It's investigating a world that you hadn't seen on TV before. And then these women who you had never seen and who were talking about things you never heard talked about. And I just think it was so innovative and so different, but also being able to then go into their flashback stories and see them through a different light. I thought it was insanely special and well done and different. And it definitely, the first season especially, would have been perfect for us. We couldn't have gone to some of the places they went later in terms of, just nudity and swear words, but I think that was kind of a perfect Fox show in a lot of ways, and could have existed on our air with some changes, of course. And that would be what I would be most jealous of.
Interesting. Good.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Rich.
Yeah, no, this is great. And this is like a great interview for anyone interested in the TV creative business. It'll be like a primer for them to watch this. So I really appreciate it all the time.
Of course. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Best of luck with the new season.
Thanks. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Take care, Charlie.
Bye.